Protesters moved toward the state capitol. We talked about that, only to be met by police and Georgia State Patrol. Our Hope Ford continues our team coverage tonight. Hope?
Yeah, we are here at the Capitol right now. There's not nearly as many people that are left here right now. There were about up to 250, 300 people earlier tonight, but there's just a handful of people who are still out here tonight. There were it was about an hour there where things got a little rocky between police and the protesters out here. There was a lot of tear gas that was deployed by the Georgia State Patrol. After that tear gas, a big chunk of the group left. There were some more people out here, and that's when arrests started happening. We saw at least between 6 and 8 people that were tackled by police, that were chased by police. If they stepped a foot out into the street, they were getting arrested at that point in time. That has all calmed down. A lot of the people I've left, they're still out here. But for the most part, people throughout the day, they chanted and they marched and they walked throughout the streets, and they finally came back here again, landing at the Capitol, where there's just a couple of people here left. But for the most part, everything was calm and all throughout the day until, again, just for that last past hour where things got a little bit rocky there. But it continues on out here tonight with just a handful of people right now.
All right, Hope Ford, thank you. Thanks for that report.